Welcome back, everyone, to another episode in our series taking a look at some of my favorite scenes from some of my all-time favorite historical movies and television shows. Today we're going to take a look at one of my favorite scenes from the movie Glory, which is, I believe, the best Civil War movie ever made about the American Civil War. I think Gettysburg's right up there, but I just really like Glory a lot. Glory tells the story of the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry. The 54th and 55th Massachusetts were two all-black regiments that were authorized by Governor John Andrew of Massachusetts, and they were among the first black troops to enter Union service in the American Civil War. They weren't just Massachusetts men. There were men from all over the country who enlisted in these regiments because it was really their first opportunity to do so. In fact, here in Northeast Ohio, there were hundreds of Northeast Ohioans who enlisted in those two regiments. And I've actually looked into the idea of maybe writing a short story or even maybe a full book about the Ohio men who served in those units. Robert Gould Shaw, who had previously served as a line infantry officer in a Massachusetts regiment, he's in his 20s, is selected to be their colonel. He's got some family connections to Governor Andrew, so that's kind of how he gets that appointment. And so they are authorized to be an infantry regiment, and President Lincoln was hoping for a great performance from these regiments because he was hoping that this would lead to further black regiments being brought into the Union Army. By the end of the war, he will credit the hundreds of thousands of black men who serve with turning the tide of the war and helping to win that war. Now, there are some catches to this. Number one, black men couldn't serve as officers, and so they had white officers. And one of the scenes you see in the movie is when Jefferson Davis issues a proclamation basically saying that there would be a death sentence for any black men who were captured wearing Union uniforms, and any white officers leading black soldiers would be summarily put to death. And you see scenes of this at places like Fort Pillow, where the black soldiers are basically executed on the field, even wounded soldiers. And so there was a lot riding on this for them. So the scene, I want to talk about the scene we're going to take a look at today. And then afterwards, I'll give you a little bit more of a background into what happened with some of these men after the battle. So this is the Battle of Fort Wagner. This is the big battle that the 54th Massachusetts is involved in. They had had a previous skirmish before this, and now they're going into combat, and they're leading the attack on Fort Wagner, which is one of the forts that defends Charleston Harbor. The nature of the terrain means that only one regiment can attack the fort at a time, and so the 54th Massachusetts is the lead regiment. They end up suffering something like 50% casualties in this attack. And what you're going to see is them marching into position to lead this attack. And previously, there had been a scene where some white men, white soldiers, had gotten into a scuffle with some black soldiers, and they had insulted them. And used some racial slurs to basically say, that black men had no business being in the army for anything other than manual labor. They had no business fighting. And so now what you see is that same man who had insulted them earlier showing his respect for his fellow soldiers. And incidentally, I found out that this man, this actor playing this role, who says this famous line in the movie, was one of the screenwriters for Glory. And he's since passed away, I guess. But let's take a look at the scene, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington.
Get Mel, 54th! Get
So yeah, I love that scene because it's like, and again, this is one of those things we don't know if something like that happened. It's kind of adding to the story a little bit, but it's a great scene because you see how the whole time, this whole movie, these guys have been fighting for respect. They finally get to wear at first they get to enlist, but they aren't given uniforms or rifles, and then they have to fight to get those. They have to fight to get shoes for these troops. They finally get down south, and they're basically used for manual labor, and so they have to fight to get an opportunity for combat, and they get that, and so they've been clawing their way, just trying to earn respect, and then there they get it right before they go into this disastrous attack that will fail on Fort Wagner. Colonel Shaw is killed, leading his men up the parapet. The first action for which an African-American soldier is given the Medal of Honor happens at Fort Wagner, where Sergeant William Carney, who Denzel Washington's character is kind of loosely based on him. Sergeant William Carney will grab the colors when the color bearer is shot and go to the top of the hill and say, "Come on, boys, I didn't let these colors touch the ground," and he will kind of help lead them in the attack on the fort. It was many, many years before he was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions, and other men were awarded it sooner, but not for an earlier action. So this is the first time somebody performs a Medal of Honor action, an African American. Like I said, about half the men die in this battle. Colonel Shaw is one of them. Colonel Shaw, as you see at the end of the movie, is thrown into a burial pit with the rest of his soldiers. And later on, the U.S. Army would go to recover at least the officers. And this wasn't so much an insult toward the black soldiers. This was common practice. You see this later at Little Bighorn, where they didn't recover all the bodies. They went back and recovered the officers' bodies, and the rest of the men they left buried where they were. So it was just something that they did with officers. But Robert Gould Shaw's father said no, he was proud that his son was buried with his men there. Unfortunately, many of those bodies have probably since washed out to sea because of the erosion that has taken place where the battle was. But cool story as well. The 54th Massachusetts is now an active regiment again. It's a Massachusetts National Guard unit that is used for ceremonial purposes, for things like funerals, for example. But they trace their lineage back to this unit. So one of my favorite scenes. I absolutely love this one. There's a lot of great scenes in Glory, but that one ranks right up there for me. Denzel Washington receives an Oscar for his performance in this movie. Well deserved. Some great acting performances all around in this one. Obviously, you have Carrie Elways is in this, and you have Ferris Bueller himself in this one playing Robert Gould Shaw, and I think doing a fantastic job of it. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know scenes you think I should talk about in future episodes of this series. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Hit that like button, and definitely watch the movie Glory if you've never seen it before.